Avengers Endgame is a crowning achievement of 21 previous movies and 3 complete phases of storylines within the last decade. In my opinion, they really brought everything together from all those previous films into this one in a very good way. So just to give you a little bit of a heads up, just before I watched this movie, I watched or rewatched Avengers Infinity War, and I saw it with a friend, and so I could sort of get caught up to the immediate storyline since I hadn't seen Infinity Wars since it came out a couple years ago. So I basically saw one and then the other with only an hour break in between them, and I have to say that the story was pretty much pieced together pretty seamlessly between the two, and I thought that what transpired in the movie that I just saw was a great culmination of sorts of this entire franchise, and I thought it really sort of wrapped up a lot of things and sort of brought in a new world out of it. So I stopped reading comic books in 1992, but I could see a lot of the things that they did in this movie that was basically nodded to things that occurred way back when, and more than likely there were some things that nodded to some other occurrences since I stopped reading. And overall, what I saw was pretty impressive. Now, I couldn't see all the Easter eggs that were essentially in the film, but I could see a lot of the things like, oh, here's this. I remember reading a comic book where that happened, or here's another comic book that I read where this happened. And they even referenced some previous things that occurred within this Marvel Cinematic Universe in the last 10 years. So I thought it was pretty cool. They sort of had a lot of nods and similar references to previous material. And one thing about this movie, as someone that saw Superman 2 back in the early 1980s when that came out, superhero versus supervillain conflict, these kind of large battles have come a long way. And I think that what we see here is essentially the battle scene to end all battle scenes in this movie that even one-ups what we saw in Infinity War. So this is, without giving anything away, there's a lot of combat in this film that was mind-blowing. Not just necessarily any one big scene, but throughout there was a lot of epic confrontations that I think that most people will enjoy who haven't seen this film yet. Another thing I want to mention is 3D was really good in this film, and nothing about it ruined this experience. And the special effects were absolutely amazing, and I thought that they really lended to a superhero film where they just went all out and made the whole experience super. So it was just really spectacular, the visual experience from beginning to end. Another thing is you might expect is there's some time travel involved, and I'm not going to give anything away here, but I like how they handled the whole issue of time travel, both from previous films to this one, and they actually explained the rationale within the film while referencing others to let you have a good idea of what's going on. So I thought it was really kind of cool how they discussed the concept of time travel, etc. So now I'm going to talk about a couple bad things in this film, but again, I'm not going to give away any spoilers. But the story was a little bit hard to follow, especially towards the end, and that's unfortunately going to happen with this type of a film, both because of the epic scope in terms of space and time, basically. So the final product was riddled with a little bit of continuity issues. Some of them were very noticeable from one scene to the other, and again, I'll go through that in my spoiler review. The movie was also 3 hours long, and I definitely had to use the restroom about 2/3 of the way through. So those are two of the bigger things here. So I think the movie, all in all, was good, and you have to realize that Marvel Studios, they know what they're doing, and I think they built an exceptional product here. I thought that the movie from beginning to end was just amazing, and I think there's no other way to describe this movie without going to spoilers, because once you get into the fine details and the way the characters interacted, the setting and atmosphere, and the nuances and some of the kind of crazy things they do, it's just extremely interesting. Basically, it's hard to come up with all the right descriptors for this, but anyways, highly recommend you watch this movie, particularly if you're invested in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. You pretty much have no choice but to see this movie. I thought it was just above and beyond the normal superhero movies. And it's not a political movie per se, something I usually find interest within movies. It was just basically an overall really good action, adventure, science fiction, fantasy movie that was put together very well. A lot of hands were in the pot, but they made it one consistent story that had a typical like hero's journey or set of hero's journeys, and followed a more traditional sort of escalating storyline, and had a lot of the right battles and a lot of the right places and a lot of the amazing character interactions. And it's just a huge evolution of this series and just a fantastic way of wrapping this up. So anyways, thank you very much for watching, and I hope to see you in my spoiler-filled movie review coming out in the next day or two.